Well, welcome everybody. This is John Manna from CDW. Just wanted to say hello. Tom's going to be sharing out his screen here in just a sec, and we're going to get started. Again, welcome. This is part of an educational workshop series that we've been doing now for just about a year. And almost every month, we're choosing a topic and coming to our customers to share ideas and thoughts. So we bring experts from our practice, and I'm real excited about this particular topic. It kind of moves away a little bit from some of the technical things that we've typically done and really focuses on the business of IT and how we can leverage ServiceNow and other technologies, not only to help us with cost justification, but value positioning. And of course, this is not a spoiler alert, but a whole lot of it ties back to visibility. So real excited about it. I'm about to turn over the mic in a sec, but first I wanted to share a little bit of housekeeping. Later in the session, you're going to get a survey as we're wrapping up, and we're going to ask you what you thought of it. And please score it and let us know how we're doing. But also, there's a field that says, what other topics are you interested in? If you can please type a few words in there, send it back. We are working on our agenda for future sessions this year and would like to take your feedback into account. And then the other thing I wanted to share as well is that questions and answers. There's a Q&A section over on the panel. If you have questions at any time, type them in there. We're going to get to those questions, time permitting, at the end. I'll read them back, and we'll make sure that if we don't cover them live, we'll do a follow-up for you, but chances are we'll get to them live as well. So please put your questions in as you have them in the Q&A chat. And now I'd like to introduce our speakers today and let you know a little bit about them. So first of all, Dale has been part of our team for a while, and his focus is not only on the ServiceNow platform, but a lot around the people, process, and organizational change management side of things. So he's going to be speaking a bit today and tag teaming with Tom Urban, who's going to be up first. And Tom is a longtime partner of ours. I've worked with Tom for a long time. He and his team of specialists can come in and work with us closely on anything financial or business related as it pertains to ServiceNow. And Tom's going to bring a lot of knowledge and information from the industry for us today. So on that note, I'm going to turn the mic over to Tom and let him get started.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. As John mentioned, I'll be providing an overview of how CDW has been helping companies with Apptio and ServiceNow find tremendous value with relatively little investment from solutions they already own. Then I'm going to hand it over to Dale, who's going to take you through how we actually make that happen. So before we get into optimizing the business of IT, I always like to talk about, well, what is the business of IT? And it doesn't matter if, let's talk about business for a second. Any business, lemonade stand, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, you should have these three legs to the stool, right? There should be a plan where you just say, this is what I want to do. You should execute against the plan. And then you should assess how you're doing against the plan and the execute and feed that back into the next plan that you do. So you have this continuous improvement process, and you can't have a continuous improvement unless you have a contiguous process. So focusing in on that plan portion, that's really where we set our strategy and our expected value. And when we think about that in terms of the business of IT, that's our investment plan. So the executives got together and they said, look, we want IT to support these business initiatives, and we're willing to invest this much money to do it. And that could be a 3 to 5 year horizon on what that investment's going to be. And then that gets broken down further into an annual plan, which takes the form of budgets, commits, and actuals. But no plan is perfect, right? No plan really ever lasts 12 months before something comes along. Let's say somebody drops a pandemic on you, and you have to somehow now support work from home initiatives. And if you're not the government, you don't get more money to do that, right? You have to find a way to fit that into your existing budget. So you have to move things around, do what if scenarios, maybe push projects or cancel projects, maybe sweat your assets a little bit. But you need to be able to move that around. And as you're doing that, you need to communicate that out to all parts of the business so that they know that you've made a shift to accommodate some new priority. We take that plan and we move it into the cost of IT services. And that's really that execute phase. And that's where we procure resources to deliver the services. So this is where a lot of ServiceNow people focus, right, is delivering better delivering better services to the business. But it's really because ServiceNow is so good at workflows, this is a big part of the financial workflow and what ServiceNow can do. So this is where we can manage our ongoing costs, our life cycle of financials for IT. And it's also where we get the opportunity to optimize IT spend. And then that feeds into the consumption of IT services. And people typically think of that as like show back or chargeback. And, I talked about that. Our consumers also have changing priorities. So I may have put together this really great service for them, and they're like, yeah, that's great, but this is how my part of the business has changed, and I need you to support me in new and different ways. So how do we adapt to that? So it's not about looking at showback or chargeback as a destination. It's really just a link in the chain that allows me to do everything else better. So I adapt to new requirements, but it also gives me the opportunity to optimize my investments by seeing how they're being consumed, and I can feed that back into the plan. Because of this downward pressure on IT to demonstrate their value to the business, a lot of people start here. They're like, if I can just get my costs assigned out to consumers, I can take the pressure off. And it does take some of the pressure off, but you can't just throw a cost over at somebody. They have to actually be willing to accept that cost as well. So showback chargeback has to be drillable and it has to be defensible. And the story I like to tell is like, let's say your cell phone bill is $80 a month and it's been $80 a month for 6 months. And then one month it shows up and it's $300. Well, you're probably not going to pay it without understanding why it jumped to $300. Well, that's where you need the details in it. So you flip past the first page and you go, oh, geez, I called Germany a few times. I called India. I called Japan. I called Mexico. Okay, now I see why it's more. It's because I did more last month. So it's having that defensibility and the drillability, not just about getting the cost assigned out. And you get that defensibility and drillability by looking backwards at, where did those costs come from? How did they get built out? So what we want to do is hear back from you on this. Before we get too far into this, maybe tweak the presentation a little bit based on what your biggest business challenges are with optimizing the business of IT. So this is what we hear from a lot of different customers, but what we want to do is hear from you. So one of them is just justifying the run versus invest costs, right? There's this pushback on, why is keeping the lights on so expensive? And you can see the poll over there on the right side. Versus why aren't you doing more to adapt to business needs? Why is the invest such a small portion? Next one is defending the consumption of IT, the showback. And I talked about that, right? You can't just hand somebody a bill. You have to defend why you're handing them the bill, and they have to be willing to accept that bill so that you can maybe do a journal entry to transfer the cost. The other one is demonstrating the business value of IT to executives. So we kind of look at the executives as the investors in IT. And investors expect a return on investment. They expect some sort of value. So are you able to do that? Or is that a challenge for you? Managing and monitoring IT budgets, commits, and actuals. So this is one of those things where, there's sometimes this friction between finance and IT of, what are you doing with the money and where did you budget it? And are you within budget? Are you over budget? Are you under budget? Are you tracking that against commits and actuals or just actuals? If you just track it against actuals, that can create an issue if, let's say I had a $100 million budget and I committed 70 million of it. Well, I only have 30 million left, but if I only looked at actuals, my actuals might be 50 million. So I need to see that whole vision. Rationalizing disparate data sources. So this is one of those challenges. Bringing all this information into one place is the way to get visibility. John talked about this. Visibility is how you drive costs down. But you can't just bring all this together. It's got to be rationalized and normalized against the other information. I'm in working backward looking versus forward looking information. So that's just like showback typically is showing what's already happened, right? It's a show back. But that doesn't necessarily keep you out of trouble if you're trying to look forward and run IT like a business. Where have I been? So it looks like the poll's ended. Let's see, what do we have here? Boy, most people were pretty shy out there. 75% didn't answer. So defending the consumption of IT looks like it's the winner of the remaining answers, which isn't surprising since, if you have Apptio, that's a big part of what you're doing. And that's what we're going to talk about today is how do you make that defense easier to do, more justified, deeper, and more robust. So I'm kind of glad that one popped up there. Managing and monitoring IT budgets. So the people who have that one, that actually ties into Showback. And it's funny how our Showback conversations, we sometimes have to walk them back to, well, where do the costs come from? So that's good. And then rationalizing data sources, that's another one for Showback. So thank you everybody who participated in that. I'm going to move on. So why is optimizing the business of IT so hard? Close this. Well, this is, a lot of times a typical Apptio environment, right? You go out and you get your CapEx and your OpEx for the ERP, and you have all these integration points where you're pulling all this information in, and you're trying to rationalize all this so that you can create those levels or those tiers where people can drill down on it. You need those multiple layers of many-to-many relationships, and like I said, without it, you get a significant pushback. So, Apptio is phenomenal at creating these linkages and everything, but there's a lot of times a manual effort to actually getting it built out so that it can adjust that information. And what people have figured out is, hey, don't I have a lot of that over in ServiceNow? And you do. So it's kind of nice that you have a lot of that built out there. You have those service configurations, so that helps you pull in that information. It's going to reduce your sources of truth. ServiceNow is really good at keeping information current, right? That's kind of its strength is what's going on right now, what's going on today. Apptio's strength is, they're this voracious engine that allows you to provide these really cool looking reports. But what's missing from this is that integration doesn't really address financial normalization. And what does that mean? Because you look at that, I don't know if it even, makes sense to a lot of people. Well, so I always like to talk about storage and normalizing storage because this is one of those weird things. People spend a lot of money on storage. You buy 3 petabytes of storage, and by the time you format it, and depending on how you format it, you sure don't have 3 petabytes that's available to your consumers. The amount assigned is not the amount consumed. Well, so what does that mean? Well, I have to allocate usually more than people are consuming. And I might allocate a petabyte if they need 80% of that, because I don't want them to go over. I don't want things to happen there. So what do I do with that overage? Who absorbs that? Does IT absorb that, or do I have the opportunity to allocate out my overhead? Production amount is not total amount. So, if you think about that, I have an application that needs a petabyte of data. Well, it's a mission critical application, so I'm going to actually set up an HA environment that I can fail over into. So I need another petabyte of data, and it's really, really important. So I need to back up that data. Well, even with compression, that might be another petabyte of data. So the production amount's 1 petabyte, but the total amount to support that app might be 3 petabytes. Virtual perspective is not physical perspective, and this is kind of counterintuitive for people. If I go run discovery on VMware and say, hey, okay, VMware, how much EMC storage are you using? And then I go over to EMC and I say, okay, EMC, how much storage have you allocated to VMware? Well, you would think if EMC said I gave VMware $1, VMware would say, yeah, EMC gave me $1. But it doesn't work out that way. Sometimes it's 98 cents, sometimes it's $1.05. It doesn't always work out. And so this is where you want to partner like CDW, because there's actually capabilities within ServiceNow that are not in your basic normal integration that allows you to actually create this linkage so that you can keep that data normalized. And something else about storage, whatever you're paying for storage today, odds are it's less than you paid for it yesterday, right? The cost of storage just goes down over time. So if you can pass that delay of purchase on to your consumers, now they're encouraged to say, you know what, maybe I don't need a petabyte today. Maybe I can get, 80% of that today, and I'll sweat a little bit of that out because I know that IT will get a better deal on it tomorrow. So, when you look at it from all these different facets, it's really kind of hard if I just took all these pieces as like separate jigsaw pieces, threw them over the wall and said, okay, Apptio, figure out how to do all this. So doing this in ServiceNow makes it a lot easier when it gets passed over to Apptio. So I had that kind of arch at the beginning where I talked about plan and execute. And the reason for that is, the business of IT really should focus on the plan and the execute financials before assess. So instead of getting all this stuff and trying to work backwards, work forwards. So I put together a plan. Well, what do you mean you put together a plan? Well, this is capability inside of ServiceNow where we're doing our budgeting, our forecasting, et cetera. We're leveraging the financial workflows that actually already live inside of ServiceNow. So this is inherent function. If you have ServiceNow, you already have this. Believe it or not, it's in there. Um, and when we tell people, hey, it's there, it's funny. The first thing that people say is, well, finance already has a budgeting solution. It's like, yeah, finance has a budgeting solution for finance, but finance budgets in terms of CapEx and OpEx. IT budgets in terms of services, projects, demands. And so when you start to try and push that information back and forth, you kind of get to a least common denominator and you miss out on a lot of visibility. And we talked about visibility is the opportunity to drive out costs. So when we actually move this from spreadsheets, emails, post-it notes, horse trading, meetings, et cetera, into ServiceNow, people find an ROI of 3 to 5x in there. Now, some of that's soft dollar savings, but a good chunk of it is actually hard dollar savings. And that's one of those things that's kind of, makes people's eyes get really wide when they say, look, ServiceNow is going to help you drive hard dollar savings. Because, the typical thing is we're going to make you more efficient, we're going to avoid costs, et cetera. But this actually gives you the opportunity to claw back hard dollars. When we move into the execute phase, that's where I take a request and I say, well, before I process your request, do I have budget for it? And I have budget for it. Is this a standardized item or a non-standardized item? And it's really creating a lot of that workflow information, but the financial capabilities within it. And this is actually where you can get some of the best hard dollar savings. We had one customer that did this with us. They got an ROI they figured out of 40x. So what they paid, they got a 40x return. Now, I'm not going to tell anybody they're going to get a 40x return, right? They were really invested in this and they knew that they had a big problem. But even 5 to 10x, I mean, if you look around at the projects that you're doing today, can you show a 5 to 10x savings? Or sorry, 5 to 10x ROI on what's going on in there? And the other pushback in there is we bring ServiceNow in. We're not saying displace this, we're not displacing your ERP. We're playing nice with it. We're not displacing your procurement solution, right? You have a procurement solution. We're going to play nice with it. We're going to say, look, we're going to send you a purchase request. Just share the information back with us. What was the PO number? When did you commit it? When can we expect it, et cetera? That's going to help us optimize our inventory levels, et cetera. So now that we have this all brought together, now we have a normalized cost of services that we can feed into Apptio. What that gives us is more detailed defensibility because we do hear and more levels of drillability because what we do hear from people is that, look, I'm using Apptio, it's doing a really good job, but it's really tough to get down below 2 or 3 levels of my defensibility. I would really like to get down to maybe 4, 5, or 6 levels. By bringing in that normalized cost of services, that allows us to do that. So benefits of financially enabling ServiceNow. That's kind of what this comes down to is, we talked about optimizing the business of IT. You get there by financially enabling ServiceNow and taking advantage of those workflows. You're going to get those real-time insights in optimizing the business of IT because you're going to have that visibility. You're going to get them faster, more detailed with less effort. Dale's going to take you through how some of the things that ServiceNow's come out with, even just in the last 12 months, automates and simplifies a lot of this. It's going to take a lot of work off your plate, give you greater visibility. And it's not just about looking backward at what I've done, but where am I right now and where am I going? Keep me out of trouble. I make the story of trying to drive the car by only looking out the rear window. That's kind of rough if there's a corner coming and you need to turn. You need to look out the front windshield. You need to know where you are, where you're going, and where you've been. This is going to get a much stronger return on investment because we're going to optimize the spend across every phase. Plan, execute, and assess. It's a big deal. We can oftentimes self-fund in under a year. And when I talk about self-funding, that's not self-funding from the end of the project. That's self-funding from the start of the project. That's how much robustness is in ServiceNow. We get in there, we can actually start lighting this up and start delivering value so that we're self-funded in less than a year. So if you go to somebody else and they're like, well, that project's going to take 14 months. Well, there's no way you're self-funding in under a year if you're not even done within a year. So that's what we try to do is get in there, get value going for you, get this thing paid for, all within that 12-month cycle. Probably one of the most important things is that this is built on out of the box functionality. We're not saying bring in a new app because we know bringing in a new app into an environment, there's training issues, there's security issues, there's a bunch of things that go into bringing in a new app. I mean, this isn't a custom app. We're not saying, hey, build an app in ServiceNow or buy an app from the App Store or anything. You already have this stuff. It's already there. You just need to light it up. So with that, that's the why of why you should do this. I want to turn it over to Dale now, and Dale's going to talk about the why. Why would you do this? Dale, you ready to take it away?
I am. Thanks, Tom. So I'm going to share with you really how we can leverage ServiceNow to support this going forward. And I just need someone to give me access to the share here, and I should be off and running. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Oh, we're seeing your presenter. There we go.
Okay. So, when it comes to ServiceNow, obviously one of the core concepts here is CMDB. I think, everyone on the call here is familiar with CMDB. And that's really where it starts, right? And in most organizations, you're probably already leveraging this to provide data to Apptio, but it really goes beyond that, right? So what I want to talk about is how do we get the data in the CMDB and how do we get it in there in a way that's normalized and ready to be a trusted source of data, right? So I'm going to have multiple sources. I got multiple tools, multiple repositories, and the really neat thing about ServiceNow is it's got an enterprise-ready multi-source engine. You can do discovery, and many of you probably already are doing ServiceNow discovery, but you can bring in data from other sources, right? Finance or asset data from asset repositories or other data sources, right? And all of that comes in through the multi-source engine and really provides a mechanism to normalize and rationalize and kind of create this kind of connective tissue in the CMDB, right? So along with that is a common service data model, right? This is something relatively new that ServiceNow has really incorporated over the last couple years. And this is really a game changer because this provides that ability to now bring that service context, that application context and business context into the overall data model, right? And then finally, as Tom mentioned, right, bringing some of that financial data into ServiceNow provides that ability to now create that deeper level of financial capabilities within the platform and provide those service costs that are really going to and provide that deeper level of defensibility and information and decisioning that's going to be really valuable going forward. So we take these kind of three core ingredients, right, and then we provide dashboards and reports, and we get real-time visibility because the platform is looking at the data in real time. And obviously that's going to light up and provide a lot of additional information on the Apptio showback and consumption side. But really, there's a really bigger story here, and it kind of an additional value proposition here as part of this. As you're going through and thinking about this from a financial perspective, by the very nature of creating this data model, and by the very nature of building these relationships, you're also providing a very, very rich set of data that you can now use for your operational use cases, right? So when you think about this, I'm now going to be able to see my services. I'm going to be able to see, how those services connect up to my businesses, to my applications, to my underlying infrastructure, and it's going to be a really a game changer when I talk about, how I might leverage this in my DevOps or my GRC or operations management, right? So it's a great story, and I call it the twofer story, right? You're going to get the great financial visibility and greater level of information and drillability, but you're also going to get the service aware capabilities that are going to support your other operational environments. All right, so let's dig in a little bit into each one of these areas. So let's talk a little bit here about the multi-source engine, right? So if you consider, if we think about the storage use case that Tom was talking about, right, we have to understand consumption, and there's a lot of data from a lot of different towers that we have to, kind of manage and get information from, right? And each one of these towers has a different lens that they're looking at the data from, right? The names are different, the relationships are different. I might have different attributes that I need to really provide the information and get that defensibility that I'm looking for, right? So this is really, really hard to do on one or two or three towers, but if you have a number of towers of data or repositories that you have to manage, it's really, really hard to do this. And this is an area where we see a lot of organizations struggling because they have multiple sources, and all of those sources have to be kind of brought together and managed and normalized, right? So that's where the ServiceNow platform really provides a enterprise class capability where we can normalize the data, and this becomes performance optimized, right? I can eliminate a lot of that manual work that goes into normalizing data across multiple sources, making sure I got the right attributes, making sure I got the right relationships, right? And then that gets standardized across the environment, right? So before I bring it into my source of truth, I'm going to standardize, and I'm going to provide the business rules that help me capture the data that I need and keep that data up to date, right? And then another thing that goes with this, we talked about the common service data model a little earlier. This also provides a compliant set of mapping capabilities so that when I'm bringing data in, I want to make sure that data applies and maps directly back to that data model that I built. And that's also available through this capability, right? And then we've got a reconciliation engine. There's a lot of kind of inherent tools in the platform to manage the data, make sure that if I've got any sort of exceptions or something's changing, that shows up on a dashboard, and I can immediately start working through that and make sure that the data stays accurate. So the other aspect that we talked about, right? We've got all this data. How do we make sure that this aligns to provide meaningful information to our business partners and supplies the right data for the model, right? So ServiceNow provides this common service data model. This is a prescriptive approach, and as you can see in this illustration, there's a lot of relational data that has to be managed. To really, get the, kind of get that service aware and get that kind of financially aware modeling, right? So the good news is this is something ServiceNow excels at, right? This data model is inherent in the platform, and as you're bringing data in, it gets applied to this model, and this is where again a lot of value is brought to the table here, right? So let's talk about this. Let's use again. Let's go back to our storage example. So if you think about storage, the configuration of your storage environment, right? And in this model here, this example, right, I might have a business service called storage, right? And I might have a couple of offerings, right? I might offer a high availability storage and a standard availability storage, right? And each one of those offerings has a dimension of data and relationships associated with it, right? And that data then is easily available and can be related up through this common service data model into these offerings, right? So that I know exactly what information, what data, what relationships is associated with high availability versus standard availability. And then I've got, information like what users are using it, what contracts are associated with it, what BUs are using it, what the product models, right? So all that information helps me build and kind of build a taxonomy and a model that supports the appropriate cost modeling information. And to go along with that, one of the things that ServiceNow has been introducing, and one of the things that they're going to be talking about here in the newest release of their common service data model, is this whole idea of lifecycle and kind of normalizing lifecycle information. So if you think about this again, if I'm using storage again as a example, if I go and request high availability storage, um, I am going to have some sort of an approval that kicks off some configuration tasks. That results in some production readiness tasks. That also creates a change request process to make sure I'm protecting my environments, and that storage eventually goes into production. So you're thinking, well, why is that important? Well, it's important because as I'm going through that cycle of activity, I'm actually impacting my cost model, right? The service costs are being updated as those activities are taking place. And again, that's the power of the tool, and that's the power of automation and the workflow capabilities within the platform. The other really, really cool part of this is you're also enabling and enhancing the user experience, right? So when you think about, digital optimization, and how this kind of impacts our users. If if I've got a service request that's in a kind of a portal, kind of a customer usable portal, and then that information is now available to all of the people that have to participate in that process, that makes that user experience much more intuitive and much more kind of enhanced, right, to the user experience. So this is again another really great part of the value proposition of doing this in ServiceNow. So, so the service cost mapping, right? So, some of you that are very familiar with Apptio, about the TBM, and the TBM has a very, kind of prescriptive service model around how we light up costs and how we share back costs to our constituency, right? Well, the good news is with the common service data model, there's really, really great ways to kind of connect those two and kind of, kind of logically connect the two sets of capabilities together, right? So if you think about business units, that's available in the foundation data, so you can have synchronization of that. Business capabilities is available in the design domain of the common service data model. Things like end user services, business services, and shared services on the TBM side, those would directly relate to business services and service offerings on the sell consume domain within the common service data model. Things like delivery services and platform services get connected to the kind of managed technical services domain. The IT towers, right? That's really the information that sits, within the CMDB, where I'm discovering servers and IoT and network gear and the whole, all the components that make up the IT towers. Cost pools, what we do with cost pools is we leverage the IT business management capabilities, and the general ledger information. Also, we leverage the IT business management capabilities. So now we have access to cost of services, and we can do the budgeting and forecasting in the platform, right? So this is kind of making ServiceNow kind of leverage the financials, right, that we talked about earlier. So, at this point, I really want to go back to the main premise, right? So it's a lot of information that we covered here, and really, I want to talk through, why is this important, right? Why is this a, kind of a game changer for organizations that have both tools, right? In most organizations, you're likely leveraging ServiceNow to some extent, but it's limited to the data that you typically find in the CMDB, right? So, if you're running discovery, you're going to have, servers and network gear and, things that typically, get discovered in the CMDB, but it's really limited, right? And it's not going to provide a tremendous amount of value in terms of getting to the next level of data in terms of kind of defensibility and drillability. And then you're still managing and reverse engineering to some degree because the flow of dollars is flowing through Apptio and not ServiceNow, right? So the big change here, right, is we're going to flip and leverage this financial data within ServiceNow, and we're going to add this plan and execute phase in ServiceNow. And again, this is IT-based planning and execution, and that's really going to provide us the capabilities to support the much richer set of data that we can use that normalizes and provides that deeper set of insights into the Apptio reporting and capabilities, right? So that's really, again, I wanted to leave you with that because that's really important to kind of come to that conclusion, right? So what does the adoption journey look like, right? So the idea here is, there's some things that you have to do to be minimally viable to get value out of this kind of adoption journey, right? So we started on the left here, right? So, typically you're going to start with core ITSM processes. You're already doing change management. You're doing incident and problem management, probably doing some level of release management in the platform. And then you have a CMDB that's normalized, that's good data, it's trusted source of truth. And then you have inventory lifecycle management and auto discovery, right? So typically you're going to be managing the inventory as it comes in, and you know where that data is, the location, and you have kind of that lifecycle approach applied to it. And then you bring in some of those IT funding sources, and you begin with that expense aligned approach. This also feeds into, obviously, on the Apptio side, you can now begin to light up cost of ownership, and provide that level of showback to your consumers. As you kind of move into the optimize phase, this is where we get more data-driven ITSM practice optimization. You begin to leverage more of the common service data model. You're going to be looking at business applications, perhaps technical services. You might even include some business services here. You're going to look at hardware and software asset management. This is where a lot of ROI can come from. Almost every organization, when they take a hard look at what that life cycle looks like, there's always opportunities there, and many times they're very significant. And then the other opportunity is going to be when you get into the IT investment planning, right? When we start looking at this, forecasting and execution part of this, and really, as Tom mentioned, right, rather than looking out the back window, you're looking through the front window. And then, of course, this feeds into your showback model and provides additional information. And as you optimize, and again, this isn't like you have to go from one column to the next column. This all kind of happens, and you look for opportunities that Tom mentioned, right? We look for opportunities that you get quick value, and then we expand on that and iteratively build capabilities. Okay, so the key takeaways, right? So better financial visibility, right? Defensible costs, the work forward approach, right? We want to look through the front windshield, and also have the ability to look in the rearview mirror. but we've got, near real-time data that we can use to manage our business of IT, right? And then leveraging IT like a business, right? Getting that business context, right? Understanding how my services are being impacted, understanding how those consumers are being impacted by those services is a big capability that ServiceNow brings to the table. And then better business partnerships, right? By having these, kind of more business related and business focused conversations, only, kind of expands and strengthens those relationships. And then this is really, when you think about it, it's a framework for digital transformation, right? Having that workflow engine, having the ability to actually improve and enhance the user experience is really, really where a lot of organizations are finding value, right? And then getting more value from the solutions you own, as Tom mentioned earlier, right? These are things you already own. These are things that you can leverage, and there isn't, additional cost to doing this. This is really, kind of taking advantage of what you own. So the bottom line here, right? So Gartner, uh, is, pays pretty close of attention to what CIOs are looking for, and they've come out and said, look, 70% of CIOs are going to have dedicated systems to help clarify and analyze IT spend. This is becoming very, very important for CIOs. The good news is you already own these systems, right? And with the right approach, right, you can find hard dollar ROI. And Tom talked about that, and we can get defensible drillable show back, and then we can, as we're going through this, we optimize the business of IT. Again, it's the twofer approach, right? I'm not only optimizing my financials, I'm not only optimizing my investment engine, I'm optimizing my operations as I'm going through this, right? So it's really a high value capability and approach. So, so what, right? So here's an opportunity, right? So we're going to be providing a complimentary evaluation, and this includes a notional ROI. So we'll work with you and kind of talk about where you're at on your ServiceNow journey, provide kind of an evaluation, provide some maturity guideposts to kind of help you understand that side of the quotient. We'll look at some opportunities around ROI and where we think you can get some ROI out of the effort, and then
Jump in on
optimization.
that, Dale,
Excuse me, yeah.
because I should have mentioned something on that. We actually have ROI calculators, so it's not
Yeah.
just a generic ROI. This is where we go in. We don't ask you a bunch of questions. It's about 10 questions so we understand your environment. And it's for those different pillars. So, we don't expect you to boil the ocean and do all this at once. You got to take it down in bite-sized chunks. So there's an ROI for the planning phase. There's an ROI for the execute phase, and there's an ROI for the showback phase. But it's not generic stuff. It's based on your budgets. What is going on in your environment, and the ROI that you can expect for what you're doing. So
Yeah, good
thanks, Dale.
point, Tom. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, so we spend time with you, and we're gonna kind of talk through all that, and as Tom said, there's some things that we can uncover pretty quickly that'll give you an idea of where there's some opportunities. So we encourage you to kind of participate in that complimentary evaluation. You can see there's a link there, cdw.com/ServiceNow_Apptio. So go there, and we'll set something up with you. So looks like we have some time to do some Q&A. So
Sure.
I'm give it back to John. John, got any questions?
Yeah, definitely do. And by the way, on the note of this call to action, um, this is not a sales activity, right? Do we hope that we eventually get an opportunity to work together on projects like this? Sure, but the output of this, the goal is simple, that after this free session, you walk out of there with some very tangible things that bring value to you, regardless of whether or not we work together again. So definitely encourage folks to take advantage of that, and we look forward to working with you. Now, as far as questions, a few questions have come in, and a couple of them I can kind of combine into one, but you've said a few times, about you already own this, you already have it. So how much of this requires the ServiceNow ITFM module? And there was another question of, will we need any incremental licensing to do it? So I've kind of combined those two together.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
do you
Go
want to take
ahead,
that?
Tom. Yeah.
So the ITFM module from ServiceNow is really used for allocating costs out, and it's something that ServiceNow has had out there for a while. But with what we've talked about today, you're not going to really need that because you're going to take your cost of services and you're going to feed that into Apptio, and Apptio is going to allocate those costs out. So there would really be no reason to have allocate the costs out in ServiceNow when you're going to do it in Apptio. So you don't really need that the ITFM module from ServiceNow with what we've discussed today. And then the incremental licensing question, um, it sort of depends on where you are with ServiceNow. So the showback piece and the CSDM piece, a lot of that is inherently in the platform. You know, you may need to do some things like Dale mentioned, like if you don't have discovery, well, how are you going to populate the CMDB? And if you don't have ITBM, well, you kind of need that for budgeting. A lot of times, if somebody has ServiceNow and they have Apptio, they have a big chunk of the licensing they need already, but we're not going to guarantee that you have everything you need. You know,
Okay.
your mileage may vary depending on where you are.
No, that sounds good. Another question. You guys, you talked about CMDB being key or critical to some aspects of this. One question said, "Hey, we just finished a CMDB cleanup effort. Does that put us in a good position to do it?" And I think that I'll put a spin on that question. Overall, right? Um, how much is it dependent on, and what's kind of minimal viable CMDB to really be able to get a lot of what you talked about today?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you did a cleanup effort is a obviously a really great step, right? And I'll say this, and I spend a lot of time working with clients in CMDB, and there's always challenges with CMDB. It's never going to be perfect, but it has to be a trustable source of data and information, and usually that requires some management capabilities around how am I doing configuration management? Do I have governance? Are people following rules when it comes to inserting data? Do I have kind of discovery mechanisms, and am I actively managing issues with the data when it comes up, right? So I would say all of that is part of the having a good CMDB. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of organizations struggle with that, right? And it's an area that it is kind of an ongoing challenge in the ServiceNow community. So we can, again, we can help you with that. We can, it might be one of the conversations that we have as part of the evaluation. But clearly, the CMDB is really important because that's the data engine within ServiceNow.
Okay. Last question here, and I know this one is going to vary a little bit, but can you give an example? How long does it usually take to implement a solution like this? What are some of the ranges?
So I'll take that because we've had experience with it. It sort of we can go as fast as people want. Sometimes it's how quickly does the customer want to go, and what's their what's their level of buy-in with this. So we've been able to do some of these projects in less than 6 months, like I talked about, if we're driving for that ROI, to get the cost of services normalized and working across there. You know that could take upwards of a year. We've had pressure to do it in 9 months, and we've been able to do that. So it's almost like one of those questions: how long is a piece of rope, right? It kind of depends on what we're doing, but or which parts of this that we're doing. But our goal here is to get this thing um, profitable as quickly as possible. And so we may not do the whole thing, but what we're gonna try and do is take down chunks of this so that you can start demonstrating value to the business, and it's hard dollar savings with the business because that's really where people start to get a star on their forehead and start looking good for making this decision. And so we try to shoot for something that's maybe in the 3 to 4 month range where they actually start to see visibility and start to get that value.
So
Yeah,
maybe go ahead.
yeah, yeah, I would just just to kind of dovetail on that, there's definitely opportunities to get quick value on this. So again, it's going to depend on the situation, but there's opportunities to get quick value.
Sounds good. I think we're going to wrap there. And one reminder, as this meeting gets shut out, you will get a pop-up. Tell us how we did here today, please, and any ideas you guys have of what topics you'd like us to do, and we'll certainly make sure you guys are in the loop on our future ones. But would love to hear feedback. And again, if you have questions and want to find out about the call to action that's on the screen, same. Again, thanks so much for everybody who joined today to spend this time with us. You'll get a copy of this presentation, a recording link as well to share with others there. And again, really appreciate the time you spent. Thanks, Dale. Thanks, Tom. And we'll wrap it up and close it out. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.